This week on Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned, we welcome our special guest, Terry Tucker. Terry is a speaker, author, and podcast guest on over 700 podcasts on the topics of motivation, mindset, and self development. Among his diverse professional roles, Terry has been a marketing executive, a hospital administrator, a SWAT hostage negotiator, and for the past 13 years, a cancer warrior. He is the author of Sustainable Excellence 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life, and a featured author of Perspectives on Cancer Stories of Healing, Hope, and Resilience. And those are the topics we're going to dive into today: the resiliency, the hope, the healing, the 10 principles to lead this uncommon and extraordinary life. I'm so excited to welcome Terry to our show this week. So I feel so fortunate that we have Terry Tucker with us today. Welcome to Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned, Terry.
Lori, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
I was just saying to Terry before we popped on that he is our first male guest, aside from my husband, who everyone always has such fun hearing from. So, looking forward to, we have to share perspectives from all different angles and insights. And so I love that we've had the opportunity to connect. Terry's here with us from Denver, which is an amazing part of the world. So, and also we were just saying it's so amazing that we have the opportunity. It doesn't matter where we are, that we can come to you this in this manner. So, Terry, I feel like you have such a rich experienced life that I almost don't know where to start. So I'm going to start here. Your career journey is incredibly diverse, from SWAT hostage negotiator to hospital administrator, author, and speaker. What would you say is the common thread that has run through all of the roles, and how has that shaped your approach to life?
I'd like to say it's service. I mean, you're right. I've had many jobs, some of them in the private sector, some in the public sector, and there are reasons why I did what I did. But I really have to go back to my parents. My parents taught my brothers and I don't have any sisters, the value of family, of loving each other, of caring for each other, of supporting each other. And my brothers are both in high school education, have pretty much spent their entire careers doing that. If you asked me what I did in my life, I would tell you I was a police officer. So all three of us, I think, I mean, my parents never said you need to give back, but they modeled it. It's like, just watch what we do. And so I think we did that. And I think now, as we have children, we're passing that on to our kids. It's important what you do with your life, not just for yourself, but also what you give back to other people with your unique gifts and talents.
It's so important, and I sometimes feel like a little bit of a lost art. It's what you said too. For me, it was the same. It was just modeled. We served the community we lived in, and whether that was through the schools or the churches or organizations that needed help, we were doing it as a family every single weekend. And so I really appreciate that and how that's threaded through everything that you do. And as we get to share this conversation, people are going to be in awe of what that looks like. So, one of the things that you speak about is leading an uncommon and extraordinary life. So, what does that really truly mean to you? And, beyond that, how can someone get there? But let's start with, what does it actually mean to you?
I mean, it means being, for me, trying to get to be an aspirational type of person. There's an entrepreneur by the name of Ed Milet, and he talks about the four types of people in the world. And when I first heard this, I was like, I got to think about this for a while. Is this really true? And he talks about the first group that you will encounter are the unmotivated people. And he said that's the vast majority of people you will encounter in your life. The next group he talks about are the motivated, where he talks about it being a carrot and stick approach to life. If I do this, I will get that. He says it's kind of low level, but it works for a lot of people to have a very happy and successful life. The third group he talks about are the inspirational people, the word inspiration coming from two words, in spirit. So if you're an inspirational person, you move people with your energy. And then, as I said, the last group he talks about are the aspirational people, where people aspire to be like you. And sometimes if I'm giving a talk, in front of a group and it's a little laid back, I'll tell that story and be like, all right, show of hands, how many people are unmotivated? And nobody ever raises their hand.
Never. They never put their hand up.
I fall into that category. But if you believe Mila, and I think I do, the more I think about it, very few people ever even think what it means to be purposeful with something meaningful in their life. They never think about that. And I go back to Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning and was a Holocaust survivor during World War II, who talks about how you shouldn't live life in the abstract, that every one of us has a reason, a purpose that we're put on the face of this earth to do, and that we almost have a moral obligation to find that purpose in life and live it. And Lori, I think so few people even look for it, let alone find it and live it.
Absolutely, fully agree with you, and am constantly inspired by some of Ed Milet's thinking for sure. And I love how you said you're leaning into seeing that that's really a truth because, we don't wanna take any of these things we hear as gospel for us. It's exploring how does that fit and how does it feel and how does it resonate and where does it show up? And I'm seeing that more and more. So the ones that are stepping into this, I'm here to make a difference and have this aspirational piece are standing out like never before because it's rare.
And it is very rare. I mean, if you have just a little bit of grit in your life, it's
Mhm.
amazing how far you can go. And everybody thinks they've got to have all this stuff. You don't have to have all this stuff. You've just got to be willing to work a little bit harder than the next person. And so few people want to work hard. I mean, we've all heard we're the product of the five people we hang around with the most. And if your audience remembers nothing I say for the rest of this podcast, remember this. I think it's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. Find people who care about you, find people that are willing to invest in you, find people that want to see you succeed, hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together.
So powerful. So powerful. So this leans into my next thought with you is one of your core truths is control your mind or it will control you. So as you're saying that, I'm thinking about this. So can you share a time maybe in your life because I know you've had some of these huge experiences when mastering that mindset piece has changed everything for you?
Sure, I learned this early in my life. When I was in high school, I ended up having 3 knee surgeries. I'm 6 foot 8 inches tall, so basketball was
I was just
something
gonna say, was it the
I
basketball court?
it was. Totally was. I was able to play in college as well, but I had 3 knee surgeries in high school, and I remember when I went back playing basketball after those knee surgeries, my brain was putting all kinds of negative thoughts into my mind. Things like, "Hey, you're probably a step slower since your surgeries, and college coaches aren't gonna be interested in recruiting you." And I remember thinking, "Wait a minute, I'm still playing at an elite level, and college coaches are still reaching out about the possibility of playing for their college or university." I remembered at 15, I needed to change the narrative. I needed to stop that negative thought that was going through my mind. And the more I've read, the more I've looked at it, and there's a lot of people who've done this research, but I'll use the Cleveland Clinic's numbers. They estimate that we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts that pass through our mind every day. About 95% of those are old thoughts, things we've thought about before. So we have about 3,500 new thoughts every day, and our minds operate at a speed of about 1,000 words a minute. Now, I took typing in high school. That's how old I am. 30 words, 40 words a minute got you an A. So 1,000 words a minute is something, that I can't even comprehend. But when you think about, all those thoughts in and of themselves are neutral. They're arbitrary. They just come and they go. They pass through. Where we get in trouble is when we start thinking about those thoughts and we apply emotions or memories or things that have happened to us in the past to those thoughts. And now I'm either scared or I'm nervous or I'm excited or whatever it ends up being. So, being able to control your mind and the things that are in your mind is an incredibly powerful thing because we all become what we think.
We do. We absolutely become what we think. That's a big theme that we share here often, and I just really want people to grab onto that. You become what you think. Even right now, as a listener, pause and think, what's going through your mind at this moment? And how are you turning that into a story or as you said, an elevated thought in a way that isn't going to serve? So if we can get this one thing, ooh, it's gonna change a lot of ripple effects. Um, you've had a battle with cancer, and um, I can only imagine the resilience and what this has taught you to your core. So, would love to have you share with us really some of the biggest things that you've taken away from that.
Sure. So, in 2012, I'm diagnosed with this rare form of cancer, this rare form of melanoma. And most people think of melanoma as too much exposure to the sun. Mine has nothing to do with sun exposure. It's a rare form that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. Mine appeared on the bottom of my foot in 2012. And I was told back then, you will more than likely be dead in 2 years. We have nothing to offer you other than surgery.
Mm.
And I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. How can I turn that death sentence into a life sentence? And Laura, I've learned a lot of things through this journey, but two of the biggest things I've learned are this. I don't think you truly know yourself until you've been tested by some form of adversity in your life. It doesn't have to be cancer. It could be all kinds of, it could be work related, it could be family, whatever it ends up being. But that's, I think, incredibly important. You've got to be tested. You got to see what you're made of. What metal do you have that you can use to bring forward when those difficult things happen? And the second thing that I've learned, and this is going to sound kind of weird, is that cancer has made me a better human being. I've been asked if I could live my life over again without cancer, and I've been doing this for 13 years now. Would I do it? And honestly, Lori, I don't think I would. I mean, I've had my foot amputated, I've had my leg amputated, I'm in a wheelchair, I've got tumors in my lungs still that I'm treated for, but cancer has made me a better human being. I've done so many physical things in my life, and now that I don't have a leg, now that I'm in a wheelchair, I think when you can't do what you're good at, you do what's important in life, and that's what I think I'm doing now.
I'm just in awe of you, as I know so many people are, and to hear that story and to hear the frequency of what you're putting out into the world. Like, the frequency of you, Terry, is so high and so optimistic and so pure love. It's amazing, and pure service as well. So, we have a choice in that. We have a choice in that, and that's what you've really shared is you could have chosen something different, could have chosen a different reaction, and yet you wouldn't have the impact that you're having based on sharing your story and who you've become. So, I think sometimes I know I'm super guilty of this is like push through the pain and we will grow. How do you recognize that moment? Because I absolutely the suffering shows us what joy can be like on the other side. And how do you recognize when it's time to surrender in certain ways and pivot, the path that you're on?
And that's a great question. Another thing I've learned through this journey is you have to find meaning in your misery. You have to find the message that you're trying that's trying to come through to you. I don't believe we suffer in vain. That there's a reason we're supposed to learn something from this exercise. I'm very much of the mindset that I don't give up. If you're gonna beat me, you're gonna have to kill me. That I'm not gonna quit. I'm not gonna give in. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, when I go for my cancer treatments, it depletes me mentally, physically, emotionally. I cry, I get down, I feel sorry for myself. But I find when I do that, I'm looking internally, like, woe is me. Look how bad things are. I'm hurting right now. And I find a real simple way to turn that around is to go find somebody to help. Go find somebody to make a difference in, like, just say hello. I remember reading a story about a professor of psychology at the University of Chicago who does this experiment with his students. He sends them out, he gets them on a bus, and he's like, "All right, the idea is in 3 questions that you're deep with somebody." So you get on a bus, sit down next to somebody and say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine. How are you?" Question 1. Question 2, and I'm just making this up. "What do you do for a living?" "Oh, I'm a doctor." "Okay." Question 3, "Have you always wanted to be a doctor?" It doesn't matter what their answer is. I mean, they could say, "No, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened." Or, "My mom was a doctor and she died of breast cancer at 40, and I'm honoring her memory by being," whatever they say, now you understand their why, their purpose, their mission in life. And Lloyd, we don't go deep with people anymore. We don't, we stay on the surface. Social media lets us do that. Everything's great, everything's wonderful. And I put out a lot of positive stuff and things like that. But like I say, when I have my treatments, I am anything but positive. I am down, I am depressed, but I find a way to turn that around is to just go make a difference. Just say hello or smile at another human being. All of a sudden, I'm not focused on me. Now I'm focused on somebody else.
So profound, and also just the deep thing. I'm like, I have just if we're not gonna go deep, you probably don't wanna be around me. So that's because life we have one life. I'm in my 50s now, and so I often am just like, "We have one life. Let's really make it count. Let's really have an impact on the people around us." I'm feeling so inspired by you. I love this. You have another one of your truths is, oh, this is beautiful. What you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of others, which is what you're saying, right? So when you sit on that bus beside that person, what are you weaving in? So when you explore that within yourself, what is that legacy that you or that impact that you really hope to leave?
I don't think about, the legacy, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean,
not
100 years from now, nobody's gonna remember I was here
yeah.
at all. But what I try to do is what we were just talking about. I try to connect, to have those relationships with people. I mean, I think people are fascinating. Everybody's got a story. I remember I'll give you a nurse story. When I first was being treated on the unit where I'm treated now for my tumors in my lungs, there was a nurse there. She's about 25 years old, a young nurse. She was being precepted by another nurse on how things went in the unit. And about 6 months later, she was taking care of me by herself. And she came in and she said, "Terry, I've got a story I want to tell you, but I don't know how to tell it to you." And Lori, I didn't know how to respond to that. I mean, what do you say when somebody says something like that to you? I said, "Well, I hope you decide you want to tell it to me because I think I would probably enjoy it." So she's in and out for the next couple hours and then finally comes in, sits down. She's like, "All right, here's the story." She said, "When I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I had a very good friend of mine die. I was in a really dark place. I talked to my family. I was going to quit nursing and I was going to go to work for Amazon." And she said, "And then I met you." And she said, "I see what you go through with your treatments." I have a very bad reaction to my treatments. And she said, "Then I went back in your file and I read everything that you had been through during your whatever it was back then, 8 years, 9 years of treatment." And she said, "When I finished reading your story, I knew I was where I was supposed to be." Now, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that my life had such an impact on this young woman. People that are listening to us out there right now who think, "You know what? My life doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Nobody can learn anything from me." I promise you, there are people out there, some you may know, some you may not, that are watching how you handle your adversity in life and would give almost everything they have just to walk 5 minutes in your shoes. Don't ever think your life doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Fully agree with that. I'm curious, what an amazing story of that impact in that moment. My dad went through a health crisis 10 years ago, and we were told he would not survive it. And his lungs, his kidneys, his heart, um, all and his brain all shut down at the same time. So he had like 60 mini strokes and then everything else shut down. So he went into a coma. And he did live, and he went into rehabilitation for 6 months, and he had to learn to talk again, walk again, write again, figure himself out again, and today, I say he's a walking miracle. Um, he can drive again, he's playing golf again. I mean, his brain is not the same, but he's living a beautiful life and spends so much time in service through Rotary Club and his community where he lives. He's involved in everything. They have this amazing TOK once a week, table of knowledge, where they're all the men in the community that he's in his 80s get together and they they gotta talk about the wisdom of the week. So, I watching that, never once did I hear him complain. Not to a nurse, not to the people on his healing team, not to his family, and, like, it was just remarkable to watch him reclaim himself, literally. So, those stories are all around us if we look for them when we need them. I think that, your book will you tell us about your book? Is
No,
it
the book is called
around there?
sure. Yeah, it's back there and
Yeah.
it's here as well.
There we
So
go. Sustainable excellence.
yeah, sustainable excellence, the 10 principles to leading your uncommon and extraordinary life. And Lori, never in a million years would I have ever expected to write a book, never really wanted to write a book.
Mm.
There's kind of an old joke that says when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So God has never talked to me and said, "Hey, Terry, you should, write a book." But I think what God has done, and this has happened several times in my life, but now that I'm older and a little more mature, I pay attention to it is he puts people on the path that are like, you should write a book, you should write a book, you should write a book. And I'm smart enough now, I think when that happens, I need to pay attention to that. So sustainable excellence was really a book born out of two conversations I had. I used to be a high school girls basketball coach when we lived in Texas. And I had one of my former players move to the area in Colorado where my wife and I live with her fiance. And the four of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner that I was excited that she was living close and I could watch her find and live her purpose.
Mhm.
And Lori, she got real quiet for a while. And then she looked at me. She said, "Well, coach, what do you think my purpose is?" I said, Absolutely no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, using your unique gifts and talents, and living that reason." So that was one story. And then the other story was a young man who reached out to me on social media from college. And he said, "What do you think are the most important things I need to learn, not to just be successful in my job or in business, but to be successful in life?" And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help other, the sort of cliches that we already know. So I spent some time taking some notes and was kind of had these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles. And so I sent them to him. And then I stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath that principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates this principle. So literally during the 4 to 5 months that I was healing after I had my leg amputated, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles. That's how sustainable excellence came to be.
Oh, that's so incredible. I'm wondering about the most impactful feedback that you've received from somebody after they've had the opportunity to journey through the book.
Yeah, it's always fun for me, when somebody reaches out because there's always one principle out of the 10
Yeah.
that, this one resonated with me because of X, Y, or Z, whatever. And I love just talking about that with people. But I think the one that enough people have said is I think it's principle 2, and it's this. Most people think with their fears and their insecurities
Mm.
instead of using their minds. And I know I've done that in my life. That's why I put it in there. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not proud I did that. I've done it. And you want to get involved in a project or a business or something, then you kind of pull back. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not smart enough, or maybe I don't have enough information, or what will people say if I fail? That's thinking with our fears and our insecurities. That's not thinking with our minds. And whenever I have the opportunity, especially the young people, to talk to them, I always tell them if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, things you're going to regret are not going to be those things you did. They're going to be those things you didn't do. by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them.
Absolutely. I always say God whispers and then you don't listen and then he gets a little louder and you're still not listening and he is gonna scream. He's gonna bring like a train right through your house and you will have to be paying attention at that point. That's great feedback. Your 4th truth is as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. I love how you say that. So, I mean, you have example after example of not quitting. Is there another story that you could share with us about this principle and how it's been lived or you've seen it lived?
Absolutely, and this is a true story. This happened back in the 1950s. Now hang with me because I'm gonna tell you a rat story, but this it literally happened back in the 1950s, at Johns Hopkins University. There was a professor there by the name of Richter, and he was doing an experiment with rats, and he wanted to see how long rats could tread water, and he put rats in a tank of water over their head, and the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And just as those rats were getting ready to sink and drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he put the exact same rats back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Now think about
Whoa.
yeah, first time 15 minutes. I mean, it's not like your marriage is gonna fail, your business is gonna go under, you're gonna flunk a test. You're gonna die. Your life's gonna be over. And the second time around, 60 hours, which taught me 2 things. Number 1, the importance of hope in our lives, that if we know we're doing the right things, maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not even this year, and nothing's 100%, but if we know we're doing the right things, there's a good chance we'll get to where we wanna be. And the second thing it taught me was just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought they could. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think we all have a breaking point, but that breaking point is so much further down the road than we ever thought it was going to be. And I'm going to bring this full circle again, going back to our minds, controlling our minds, or our minds going to control us. Our brains tell us, hey, this hurts. It's uncomfortable. Stop it. Knock it off. Don't do this anymore. If you can push past that, and we know we can because we watch marathon runners do it all the time.
My
It's like,
daughter's training for one right now and I'm like, "Wow, you're a miracle."
yeah, exactly. You hit that wall, and if you keep moving forward, all of a sudden you get that second energy. That same thing applies to your mind. So when your brain tells you, stop it, it hurts, you don't have to stop. You can keep moving forward, and it'll make you more resilient. And I'll end with this. There's a line in the book, Farewell to Arms, written by Ernest Hemingway. And the line is this, and I love this line. It says, life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. So when life breaks you, and it will break all of us, if you can keep moving forward, if you can keep going forward, just like if you were to break your arm, a doctor said it, put it in a cast. When that arm heals, that bone will be stronger at the area where it was broken. That same thing works for your mind.
Mm, so powerful. We talk here on this podcast to high achieving leaders. And so this principle for them in many ways is not as much of a challenge. It's they've got the grit, climb that mountaintop and get to the next one almost sometimes to their detriment. So I'm curious, which of the principles would you say really apply to our high achievers that they need to really start paying attention to?
I think still everything goes back to control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. If you can't do that, you know, Bruce Lee, the martial artist, back in the 60s and 70s, used to talk about how be very careful how you talk to yourself
Mhm.
because we all become what we think. And I'll give you an example of this, and I'll use basketball. As I mentioned, I was a basketball player. If I took a basketball and went out onto the court and started to shoot free throws, if you could look at my brain under an MRI, there would be a certain area in my brain that would light up. It's like that's engaged doing that. But the interesting thing about that is, if I thought about taking that basketball, going out on that court and shooting those free throws, that exact same area of my brain would light up. So whether we physically do it or we think about doing it, you're going to engage that part of your brain. So if you're sitting there telling yourself, oh, I don't think I can do this. I don't think this is going to be successful. This, what about this? What about that? you're going to eventually hardwire your brain to the point where, yeah, you're right. You can't do that. And I love the story. Jesse Itzler is married to a woman by the name of Sarah Blakely. And Sarah Blakely started Spanx, which is a woman's undergarment company. And he tells a great story. He said, when she started Spanx, he said she had one prototype and $5,000. He said she had been we don't even use these anymore, a door to door fax salesperson. And his point of telling the story was, he said, if she would have waited until she understood HR and marketing and production and manufacturing, he said, I guarantee you somebody else would come up with that idea and would have run with it. So his point is, wherever you are, just start. Jump in with both feet, start and figure it out as you go along. And so many of us think that, life is linear. Like we start at A and we just kind of have this trajectory where we go to Z. It's not. I know this from basketball. You work hard and then you plateau, and then you work harder and you get worse. And then you work harder again. And then maybe you get better and then you plateau. That's what life is about. It's not a linear progression. It's up, down, up, down, up, down. But eventually you will get to where you want to be as long as you don't quit.
Absolutely. Are there specific rituals or practices that you incorporate for yourself that really help you stay in those lanes?
I do. I mean, I spend probably a couple hours every afternoon in meditating and in prayer. I've met so many people on my cancer journey that are experiencing difficult times, and I pray for them. I mean, I know they're praying for me, and I believe I have a very strong faith in God. I believe God listens to our prayers. I mean, I always feel now I should have been dead many times along my cancer journey, that God is using my infirmity, my malignancy, to show people His love, His mercy, His grace, His forgiveness, His compassion, and His healing. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about praying for, trying to help other people. That's just where I am. And so it's something I do every single day. I mean, weekends, everything. I spend a couple hours in meditation or in prayer. I mean, I have a breathing ritual that I use. I take cold showers. I watch what I eat. I mean, you would think I'm nuts if you kind of followed me around for a day. It's like, why does this guy do this? Well, I don't know. I'm 65 years old. I don't have a leg. I've got tumors in my lungs, and I'm still able to have the energy to come on and do this stuff. That's not me. That's something bigger than me that's doing this.
Amen. So powerful. Okay, I have some rapid fire questions.
Oh, super. I love
And
those.
actually, people think I'm crazy too, because your day sounds a bit like mine. And then we jump on a podcast every now and again.
That's right. We do that, right?
Some rapid fire questions. Okay. What's a book that changed your life?
Um, it's a book called Legacy. It's written by a man by the name of James Kerr. It's a book about the New Zealand national rugby team, who, by most accounts, is the most successful sports franchise in any sport in any country of all times. This guy embeds with them for a while, and just some of the amazing things about leadership, about the captains stay afterwards and clean up the locker room and things like that. Just things that I mean, and even things, when I was doing job interviews. You would do your research on the company, you would do your research on the people, you'd go in, you think, man, I better have the answer to every single question they ask. And one of the interesting things, they're called the all blacks because their uniforms are all black. That was real original. But so they they talk about when they bring a player or a coach on, certainly you've got to be good at what you do, but they don't expect you as an individual to have all the answers. What they expect is you as an individual to work within the team, to work within the system to come up with the best answers. So Legacy is a great book.
Sounds amazing. I haven't read that one, and I think it sounds, like I'll have to add that to my list, and my son's a quarterback, so I think that's a really good one for him too. What's one habit that has made the biggest difference in your success?
Oh, I would say prayer. I would say getting outside myself and trying to help somebody else, praying for another individual. Don't get me wrong, I pray for myself too, but being able to engage every day with something that's bigger than me saying, "Hey, could you please help this individual out?" That's just incredibly important to me.
Yeah. And it just raises the frequency of everything like we've been talking about. If you had a billboard that the entire world could see, what would it say?
I think I'd probably just put one word on it, and that word would be love.
Ah, yes. More love. We'll add 2. More love. That's so good. I always ask everyone at the end, Terry, what ambitious, awakened, and aligned means to them. So, what does that mean to you?
I think it means taking control of your life. You've been given this life, and we're here for such a short period of time. We're here and we're gone. And what impact are you making on the lives of other people? I grew up and you probably have heard of Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers on his television show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Well, I watched him when I was
Exactly.
growing up.
You and me both,
Sweater.
educated so many people on public television, including me and you, during our lives.
Yeah.
When Fred Rogers died in 2003, his family was going through his effects and they found his wallet. And inside his wallet was a scrap piece of paper on which Mr. Rogers had written 4 simple words: Life is for service. Give of yourself. It's not what you get in life, it's what you give. Empty yourself out with your unique gifts and talents, certainly for the betterment of yourself, but also for the betterment of your family, your friends, and community, and see how that ends up with your life.
Terry, you are a miracle. You are awe-inspiring. This has been such a beautiful conversation, and I know like, I just feel ignited myself, so I know everyone listening has just been sparked inside of them and reminded, like, I feel your words today are just they're the reminders of coming home to the essence of what truly matters in this world the most, and you're a living embodiment of that, and I treasure that because we don't often have those examples in front of us. So, thank you. Thank you for sharing your gifts with the world and your messages with us today. I'm gonna share all the details on how people can connect with you online because Terry is spreading the good word all the time, everywhere that he has the opportunity. And I really just hope that people will pause. I'm just gonna encourage everyone listening today to really pause with Terry's words because I know we get busy and we listen to a podcast, and I'm not sure that we always take it in. So this one, take in, really take in. Thank you, Terry. Any last words?
Um, yeah, I'll leave you with another quote from one of my other favorite authors, Mark Twain, who said, "The two most important days of our lives are the day we're born and the day we figure out why." Make sure that when you go to the cemetery, you figured out why you were here. So, thanks for having me on, Lori. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Terry. What a pleasure and a blessing. Thank you.